After the medical exam, I was told I'd lost my military family benefits. My battalion commander husband and I had been divorced for half a year. I was so angry I laughed, then turned around and cancelled my mother-in-law's nursing home contract, and sent her, bedridden, to the military compound in the middle of the night. He was shocked. Hello everyone. Welcome to Empress Revenge Stories. Thank you for watching and subscribing. The story officially begins now. Late spring. The wind still carried a bit of chill. I clutched my neatly folded military family ID and medical exam form, walking briskly toward the outpatient lab at the city hospital. This military family benefit had only been available since last year. After Qin Jianjun was promoted to battalion commander, a free medical exam every month. I'd specifically chosen Wednesday afternoon, thinking there would be fewer people, and after the exam I could still go to the market to buy some fresh crucian carp for my mother-in-law. He always said she needed nutrition while bedridden, so I had to go along with it. Just as I reached the window, the nurse glanced up at my military family ID, then looked down at her forms and flipped through them. Her brow suddenly furrowed. Comrade, this ID is no longer valid. The pen in my hand clattered onto the counter. I paused while bending down to pick it up. What do you mean it's no longer valid? I used it last month for an exam. The system shows that you and Battalion Commander Qin Jianjun filed for divorce half a year ago. Your military family status has been revoked for a long time. The nurse's voice was flat, but it pierced my heart like an icicle. So naturally, the medical exam benefit is no longer yours. Divorce. I repeated the word, my ears ringing. The edges of my military family ID were crumpled from being clenched so tightly. Impossible. I hadn't filed for divorce with him. He'd come home half a month ago and spoken to me, I started to say, then stopped. Qin Jianjun had indeed come home half a month ago. Stayed for only 3 hours at night. When I packed his luggage and asked about things at home, he just furrowed his brow and said, there's been a lot going on in the unit lately. Don't worry about things at home. Mom and Lily are here. Back then, I felt sorry for him being tired and didn't dare ask further. Now I realize that wasn't exhaustion. It was guilt. I steadied myself against the windowsill, my fingertips icy cold, my throat dry and tight. Nurse, are you sure you're not mistaken? My name is Lin Xiu, and Qin Jianjun is a battalion commander stationed at a certain unit. Please double-check. The nurse patiently typed at her keyboard again. The glow of the screen reflected on her face. No mistake. It's Lin Xiu. The divorce date is November 12th of last year. The husband submitted the materials unilaterally. It's recorded in the system. November of last year. Suddenly, it all came back to me, that period when my mother-in-law Zhang Tsuehua had just fallen and broken her leg. Confined to bed. My sister-in-law Chen Lily called Qin Jianjun crying, saying she couldn't take care of her, and that Qin Jianjun should force me to quit my factory job and come home full-time to wait on my mother-in-law. I'd hesitated at the time. After all, I earned over 300 a month at the factory, which was the family's main income. Now I think about it, he probably had ulterior motives back then, since I wouldn't become a full-time nanny. She simply hid the divorce from me, all while continuing to use the military family status to make me take care of his mother. The more I thought about it, the more absurd it seemed. Instead of crying, I laughed bitterly, even as tears fell from the corners of my eyes. I worked from dawn to dusk at the factory, and after work I'd rush to my in-laws' house to wipe down my mother-in-law, feed her, wash her diapers. Chen Lily, on the other hand, spent her days shopping, claiming she was too young to stay up all night. I thought if I gave my all, I'd earn some stability. But what happened? I had to learn from a stranger, a nurse, that my own marriage was already over. I didn't argue with the nurse any further. I picked up my pen from the floor, stuffed my military family ID into my bag, turned around, and walked out of the hospital. Outside the gate, bicycles streamed past in both directions, their bells ringing one after another. Street vendors pushed carts shouting about selling watermelons. But I felt cold all over. I stood at the side of the road, took a deep breath, and clenched my fists. Since Qin Jianjun could hide the divorce from me, my in-laws must have known. I had to get to the bottom of this. I got on my bike, the wheels bumping over the cracked asphalt. rattling my bones. But not as badly as the ache in my heart. From the hospital to my in-laws' place in the old part of town, I had to cross 3 streets. Normally I'd ride slowly, but today I wished I had wind-burning feet. I just wanted to get to Chin Jianjun's mother and ask her what the hell was going on. My in-laws' old house was in a narrow alley. The paint was peeling off the walls, and several coal baskets were piled by the door. As I pushed my bike inside, I ran right into Chen Lily. She had a lollipop dangling from her mouth and was flipping through a romance novel, leaning against the frame of the main room door. When she saw me, she didn't even lift an eyelid, just said lazily, "Oh, sister-in-law, what brings you here today? Don't have to go to the factory." Chen Lily, where's your brother? I leaned my bike against the wall, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. Tell me, did your brother and I get a divorce? Chen Lily paused in her chewing. Then she snickered, closed her book, and said, "Sister-in-law, who's been spreading gossip? Why bring up divorce out of nowhere?" The hospital told me. I stepped forward and grabbed her arm. The system shows the divorce was filed last November. Your brother did it unilaterally. Did you already know? Chen Lily winced at my grip and yanked her arm free. Let go. You're hurting me. She glanced toward the bedroom and lowered her voice. So what if I knew? My brother didn't have a choice. Mom fell and broke her leg. And you wouldn't quit your job to take care of her full-time. The family couldn't just have no one to look after her. I wouldn't. I was shaking with fury. I pointed at the bedroom. I came here every day after work to wipe Mom down, feed her, wash her diapers. And you're out shopping all day, saying you're too young to handle late nights. Now you're blaming me. As we argued, the sound of Zhang Cuihua coughing came from the bedroom. I immediately pushed the door open. She lay in bed, covered by a thick quilt. When she saw me enter, she closed her eyes and pretended to be confused. Xiao, you're here. Hurry and pour Mom a glass of water. My mouth feels so dry. Mom, let me ask you something. Did Jianjun and I get a divorce? I walked to her bedside, staring at her face. Did you already know? Zhang Cuihua opened her eyes, sighed, and reached out to take my hand. But I dodged away. A pitiful expression appeared on her face. Xiao, marriage is between the two of you. Mom doesn't have much to do with it. Jianjun is an honest boy. With all the pressure at the unit, maybe he just had a little argument with you. Don't take it to heart. A little argument? I nearly laughed from anger. A little argument leads to filing a unilateral divorce. A little argument gets my military family benefits revoked. Mom, put your hand on your heart and tell me, how have I treated you this past year? You were bedridden. So I quit my factory job. Oh no, that's not right. You made Jianjun force me to quit. I lost my income. And still I scraped together my own savings to hire a caregiver and put you in a nursing home. And this is how you repay me. That nursing home was Jianjun being filial. What does it have to do with you? Chen Lily followed me in, hands on her hips, standing in the doorway. My brother said that since you wouldn't take good care of Mom, getting a divorce is only right. Anyway, with you gone, my brother can find someone better. Those words cut into my heart like a dull knife. I looked at the mother and daughter before me, one pretending to be sick and pathetic, the other arrogant and domineering, and suddenly, I saw clearly. All this time, I'd given them my whole heart and treated them like family. But in their eyes, I was nothing more than a free nanny, an accessory to Qin Jianjun. I didn't even have the right to a divorce, I just had to accept it passively. I took a deep breath, suppressed my rage, and let my eyes turn cold. Fine. Since you both acknowledge this divorce, I have nothing more to say. I turned and walked toward the door. When I reached the threshold, I stopped, looked back at Zhang Cuihua pretending to be pitiful in the bedroom, and said, Mom, you've been comfortable in that nursing home. From now on, you won't need to bother anyone else. With that, I pushed my bike and stormed out of the narrow alley without looking back. The wind blew in my face, drawing the dampness at the corners of my eyes. Only one thought occupied my mind. I had to cancel that nursing home. Instead of going home, I turned my bike directly toward the Sunset Red nursing home on the outskirts of town. This nursing home was the one Qin Jianjun insisted on last December, good conditions, Professional caregivers. A place where Zhang Zuihua could recover properly. At the time, I had only a few thousand yuan in savings. He said one sentence. And I paid 3 months' fees up front, 280 a month. Almost an entire month's wages from my factory job. Back then I was foolish enough to think that as long as my mother-in-law recovered, it was fine if I suffered a bit. Now I see, it wasn't about her recovery at all. They'd already planned the divorce. Afraid Zhang Zuihua would become a burden, they used my money to dump her in a nursing home, letting me take the credit for being filial while they enjoyed the peace and quiet. Sunset Red Nursing Home sat halfway up a mountain, surrounded by green trees, definitely more impressive than the average nursing home. As I pushed my bike through the gate, the security guard stopped me. Comrade, visiting hours are from 2 to 5 in the afternoon. It's almost 6 now. Come back tomorrow. I'm not here to visit. I'm here to check out Zhang Zuihua. I pulled the payment receipt and my ID from my bag and handed them over. I'm her daughter-in-law. I paid for this nursing home. Now I'm canceling it. The security guard hesitated for a moment, but still let me in. In the office, Director Wang was packing up to go home for the day. When she heard I wanted to check out Zhang Zuihua, her brow furrowed deeply. Comrade Lin, checking out isn't possible. Zhang Zuihua needs professional care, she's bedridden. Besides, you signed a 6-month agreement, and she's only been here 4 months. If you cancel mid-stay, the remaining fees won't be refunded. I signed the agreement. I paid the money. Now I want to check out. Why shouldn't I get my money back? I slapped the payment receipt on the desk, the paper making a crisp sound. When you signed the agreement, your clause said special circumstances can be negotiated. My current situation qualifies as special. I've divorced her son Qin Jianjun. Legally, I have no relationship with him anymore, and no obligation to pay for his mother's care. Director Wang picked up the agreement, flipped through it, then looked me over. Divorced. Battalion Commander Chen didn't mention anything to us. Besides, her son is a military officer. There's no reason his ex-daughter-in-law should be the one handling the checkout. He didn't mention it because he's ashamed. I kept my voice low, afraid of drawing attention from the caregivers and other elderly residents. He filed the divorce secretly without telling me. I only found out today. I was a fool to pay in the first place. But I'm not a fool anymore. I'm getting my money back. And I'm taking her with me. Her son is an officer. He can afford to take care of her. There's no need for his ex-daughter-in-law to foot the bill. Director Wang looked troubled. But Zhang Zuihua is still lying in her room. The caregiver just fed her dinner. If you take her now, where will she go? And the remaining fees, according to policy, we can't give a full refund. Where will she go? To her son. Of course. My gaze was firm, unwavering. I need a full refund. I paid 3 months, wait. No. She moved in on December 1st of last year. That's 5 months and 20 days ago. I paid 1,400 yuan, at 280 a month. 5 months come to exactly 1,400 yuan, the term is up. I suddenly realized it, did the math in my head, and felt my anger flare even more. Qin Jianjun filed for divorce on November 12th, then sent Zhang Zuihua to the nursing home on December 1st, using the money I'd saved before the divorce, just enough for 5 months. Now that it's time to renew, they were waiting for me to pay up again, or to force me to come back and take care of her. Director Wang, look carefully. I paid for 5 months, and it expires today. I pointed at the date on the payment receipt. This isn't a mid-stay cancellation. I'm simply not renewing the term, and I'm here to pick her up. You have no reason to stop me, and no reason to withhold my money. Director Wang was speechless. She picked up the receipt again, checked it for a long time, and finally relented. Fine. Since the term has expired, I'll process the paperwork. But Zhang Zuihua can't move easily. How are you going to take her? I've already arranged for a tricycle. It's waiting at the bottom of the hill. I'd planned this out, on my way out of my in-laws' place. I'd asked the bike repairman to call a tricycle for me. Please have the caregiver get her ready. I'm taking her now. The paperwork went quickly. When Director Wang refunded my 1,400 yuan, she couldn't help but mutter, Battalion Commander Chen really handled this badly. It's not easy for a woman like you. I didn't respond. I took the money, tucked it into my clothes, and followed the caregiver to Zhang Tsuehua's room. She was lying in bed watching TV. When she saw me come in, her smug expression froze solid. "Xiao, what are you doing here? Are you here to renew my payment?" I didn't answer her. I had the caregiver help wrap her in a thin quilt and lift her onto the stretcher I'd prepared. "No, I'm here to take you away." Zhang Tsuehua panicked. "Take me where? I'm not going with you. I want to stay here." "Where's Qin Jianjun? Have him come see me. I'll take you wherever your son is." My face was cold as I directed the caregivers to carry the stretcher out. "From now on, you won't have to deal with me anymore." The tricycle's cart was padded with old quilts. The caregivers carefully lifted the mummy-like Zhang Tsuehua onto it. She thrashed and wailed. "Lin Xiao, you heartless woman. I raised Jianjun with my own blood and sweat, and this is how you treat me. Take me back to the nursing home." I didn't look back. I gave the nursing home staff 10 yuan as a tip and told the tricycle driver, "Please hurry to the military family compound on the outskirts. If we're late, they might not let us in." The driver acknowledged and started pedaling out of town. The wailing from the cart didn't stop. Zhang Tsuehua alternated between cursing me for being unfilial, shouting Qin Jianjun's name, and threatening to report me to the military authorities. I sat on the side seat at the front of the tricycle, with my back to her. The wind scattered her voice into fragments, but my heart felt a peace I'd never known before. The suburban roads in the 1990s weren't paved yet, bumpy and full of potholes. The tricycle shook violently, and Zhang Tsuehua's cries were punctuated by startled yelps, probably from fear of falling. I pulled out a pen and paper from my pocket and, under the dim glow of the streetlights, quickly scribbled a note. "Battalion Commander Chen, we have been divorced for 6 months. I have no obligation to care for your mother. Today I am returning Zhang Tsuehua to you. I hope you will fulfill your duty as a son. Lin Xiao." I folded it up, tucked it back into my pocket, and looked up at the road. In the distance, I could already see the walls of the military family compound. The searchlights swept back and forth on top of the walls, lending an air of solemnity. In the past, whenever I came here to deliver things, I'd always felt that this wall represented stability and security. Now I looked at it and saw only the cage that had trapped me, one I was finally about to break free from. By the time we reached the main gate of the military family compound, it was nearly 8 o'clock at night. 2 guards stood at attention beside the guard post. When they saw the tricycle pulling up with a bedridden elderly woman, they immediately stepped forward to block our way. "Comrade, this is a military restricted area. You can't stop here. What's your business?" "I'm looking for Battalion Commander Qin Jianjun." I jumped off the tricycle and pulled out the note. "This is his mother, Zhang Tsuehua. I'm Lin Xiao, his ex-wife. We've been divorced for 6 months. I have no obligation to care for her anymore, so I'm bringing her back." The guards were taken aback. This was probably the first time they'd encountered such a situation. They exchanged glances. One of them, a slightly older guard, said, "Comrade Lin, please wait a moment. I'll call the battalion duty office to confirm." He turned and went into the guard booth. In the cart, Zhang Tsuehua seized on this like a lifeline, raising her voice to shout, "Guard, please go get Qin Jianjun. His wife is trying to harm me. She's thrown me out of the nursing home." I ignored her ravings and said to the other guard, "Comrade, there's a record of the divorce in the hospital system. I'm not making trouble. I'm just a woman, and I can't take care of a bedridden elderly person on my own. Her son should be the one to take responsibility." The guard nodded without asking further questions, probably because he could see from my calm demeanor that I wasn't the type to cause a scene. Within a few minutes, the guard in the booth came back out. "Comrade Lin, the duty office says Battalion Commander Chen is still on the training field. They've asked us to put the elderly woman in the reception room by the guard post for now, and they've sent someone to get Battalion Commander Chen." The tricycle driver and I lifted Zhang Tsuehua from the cart and placed her on the bench in the reception room. She was still struggling, still cursing. "I'm not staying here. I'm freezing. Lin Xiao, you get back here." I took the note from my pocket and placed it on the bench beside her. Then I pulled out her usual thermos from my bag, unscrewed the cap, and poured a little warm water. This is your son's military unit, it's perfectly safe. I've left a note here. Just wait for him to come get you. With that, I turned around and left. Without looking at her again, Zhang Suihua's curses grew fainter behind me. The tricycle driver pedaled back into the city. The evening breeze carried the scent of grass and blue into my face, bringing with it a surprising warmth. I glanced back over my shoulder. The searchlights at the military compound's gate still shone bright, but that place I'd once longed for no longer stirred any attachment in me. Divorce or no divorce, being manipulated or not, it was all in the past. Starting today, Lin Xiao lives only for herself. The driver noticed I'd been quiet for a while and asked, "Comrade, did you really get divorced from Battalion Commander Chen? He's a military officer, so many people envy that." "Envy what?" I smiled, my tone light. "You have to live your own life. Only you know whether it's good or bad. Just because he's gone, doesn't mean I can't live well." The driver nodded and didn't pry further. The tricycle moved through the night. The streetlights retreated one by one, just like those wasted years I'd spent revolving around my in-laws' home. Now it was time for me to start a new life. As for Qin Jianjun and Zhang Cuihua, they'd have to repay their own debts. While I was on my way home in the tricycle, Qin Jianjun had just finished a nighttime emergency drill. He was covered in sweat on his olive-green training uniform, with bits of grass and dirt still stuck to his back. He loosened his collar as he walked toward the family compound, still mentally reviewing the tactical maneuvers. He was so exhausted his eyelids were practically glued shut. He just wanted to get back to the dorm, take a quick shower, and collapse into sleep. As he neared the gate, he caught a glimpse of two people gathered by the reception room, with a figure curled up on a bench, wrapped up tightly, looking particularly conspicuous. He didn't pay much attention at first. Families visited the compound occasionally, but it was almost 9 o'clock. Who would still be here at this hour? Battalion Commander Chen. The guard at the post saw him and immediately came over, with a complicated expression on his face. Qin Jianjun stopped and rubbed his aching temples. "What's going on?" "Sir, this woman is your mother, Zhang Cuihua." The guard pointed at the person on the bench. "She was brought here by a comrade named Lin Xiao. She said that you two have been divorced for 6 months, that she has no obligation to care for the elderly woman, and that she's returning her to you." "My mother." Qin Jianjun's brow furrowed tightly. He quickly walked over, bent down, and lifted the thin quilt covering the elderly woman. He recognized the face, tear-stained, full of resentment, and sure enough, it was his mother. "Jianjun, my son." Zhang Cuihua's tears burst forth the moment she saw him. She reached for his arm, her voice hoarse. "You're finally back. That cruel woman Lin Xiao kicked me out of the nursing home. She said she's divorced you and won't take care of me anymore." Qin Jianjun's mind buzzed as if he'd been struck by a sledgehammer. He stood frozen. Then he instinctively protested. "Divorce? What divorce? I never divorced her." "Mom, are you sure you heard right?" "I heard her loud and clear. She even left a note." Zhang Cuihua fumbled around and handed him the wind-blown, tattered note. "See for yourself. She just doesn't want to be burdened by me." Qin Jianjun's hands trembled as he took the note. Under the light of the guard post, a line of neat yet resolute handwriting appeared before his eyes. "Battalion Commander Chen, we have been divorced for 6 months. I have no obligation to care for your mother. Today I am returning Zhang Cuihua to you. I hope you will fulfill your duty as a son. Lin Xiao." Every word pricked his eyes like needles. Divorced 6 months. November 12th of last year. Suddenly, it all came back to him. Back then, his mother had just broken her leg and was bedridden. Lily had cried in his ear every day, saying she was just a young girl who couldn't handle the caregiving and that he needed to figure something out. His mother had cried on the phone too, claiming that Lin Xiao was unwilling to quit her job and become a full-time caregiver, that her heart was no longer with the family. He was facing a promotion evaluation at the time, swamped with military duties, and these family issues had left him overwhelmed and drained. Lily had come up with a plan. First stage a fake divorce with Lin Xiao, scare her a little, show her who's boss, and she'd surely come crawling back to care for mom. He disagreed at first, but his mother and Lily kept crying and complaining. Lin Xiao can't survive without you, she'll beg you to remarry her. In a moment of weakness, thinking it was just a fake divorce and that he'd explain everything to Lin Xiao after the promotion evaluation, he'd asked someone to unilaterally submit the divorce papers. He hadn't dared tell Lin Xiao, afraid she'd be furious. More afraid she wouldn't forgive him. For the past 6 months, every time he went home, he'd been rushed and evasive. He didn't dare mention the divorce, just hoping that once his mother got better, he could remarry her. He'd thought Lin Xiao would be as understanding as ever, would tolerate everything, would wait for him. What he'd never imagined was that Lin Xiao would find out, and that she'd go this far, sending his mother straight back to the military compound and cutting ties completely. Impossible. How did she find out? Qin Jianjun muttered to himself, crushing the note in his hand until it was misshapen, his fingernails turning white. He remembered going home half a month ago. When Lin Xiao asked about things at home, he'd been evasive. He remembered the worried look in her eyes. Now he realized, had she already sensed something was wrong back then? How did she find out? She found out from the hospital. Zhang Cuihua was still crying. She said her military family benefits were revoked. She only found out about the divorce when she went for her medical exam today. Jianjun, go get her. Make her take me back to the nursing home. Otherwise, I'll be left here to die. Qin Jianjun's face went from dark red to pale white. All his exhaustion was instantly replaced by a crushing panic. He looked at his mother crying on the bench, then at the note in his hand, and felt his mind go blank. He didn't even know what to do with his hands and feet. It was only then that he realized how badly he'd messed up. What he'd thought was a fake divorce, in Lin Xiao's eyes, was nothing less than outright betrayal and manipulation. She'd given her all to care for his mother, yet he'd tried to coerce her with a divorce. Who could tolerate that? Sir, what should we do now? The guard asked cautiously, seeing his distraught state. Should we move the elderly woman to the battalion's temporary dormitory? Qin Jianjun took a deep breath, pushed down his panic, and nodded. Please help me carry my mother in. He bent down and lifted Zhang Cuihua, feeling as if the person in his arms weighed 1,000 pounds. Zhang Cuihua was still complaining. I'm not going to the temporary dormitory. The conditions are terrible. I want to go back to the nursing home. You go find Lin Xiao right now and make her renew my payment. Qin Jianjun said nothing. His footsteps were heavy as he walked toward the dormitory. In the dark, his silhouette looked especially pathetic. He pulled out his pager, wanting to call Lin Xiao, but his fingers hovered over the buttons. He couldn't bring himself to press them. He didn't know what to say to her, that the divorce was fake, that his mother and Lily had pressured him into it. It all sounded so hollow and pathetic. Lin Xiao was such a proud woman. She'd married him against her family's wishes when he was a soldier, followed him through hardships and suffering, never once complaining. And yet, he'd hurt her this way. At the dormitory door, he stopped and looked toward the city. His heart was ice cold. He knew that this time, Lin Xiao was truly determined to cut him off. And the bitter fruit he'd planted with his own hands, he would have to swallow it alone. I rested at home for one night. The next morning, I tucked the refunded 1,400 yuan into my pocket and headed to the Hongyan garment factory in the southern part of the city. This factory was an old establishment, recently hiring temporary workers. I'd worked for 3 years at a textile factory before. My skills were solid. I'd called to ask yesterday, and they said to come for an interview today. In the 1990s, garment factories had plenty of orders. As long as you were willing to work hard, you'd get paid on time. It was much more stable than my previous odd jobs. The interview went smoothly. The workshop supervisor saw how fast and steady I was on the sewing machine and immediately decided to hire me. 350 yuan a month, lunch included, and I could start the same day. I changed into the factory-issued blue work uniform, sat down at the sewing machine, and listened to the rhythmic click-clack of the machine. My heart felt steady. No more thinking about how to please my mother-in-law. No more worrying about when Qin Jianjun would come home and whether I needed to pack his bags. No more being insulted by my sister-in-law. I just needed to focus on the work in front of me, and I'd earn a real paycheck. This feeling of relying on myself was more reassuring than anything. Around 3 in the afternoon, When the workshop was buzzing with activity, suddenly a commotion arose. Someone was shouting my name at the entrance. Lin Xiao, Lin Xiao, get out here. I paused on my stitching. That voice belonged to Chen Lily. I frowned, ignored it, and kept working on the sewing machine. But she wouldn't let it go. Her voice grew louder, accompanied by the scolding tone of a man, her father. Teacher Chen, presumably. Lin Xiao, you heartless woman. Hiding because you don't dare show your face. Is that it? Chen Lily burst into the workshop, her hair a mess, her face flushed with anger. Behind her followed Teacher Chen, his face dark. You dumped my mother at the military compound and you still have the nerve to work here. Aren't you afraid of karma? My fellow workers all stopped what they were doing and turned to stare at me, their eyes full of curiosity and suspicion. I took a deep breath, stopped the machine, stood up, and looked them dead in the eye. I'm here because I earned it with my skills. Why shouldn't I be here? You're the ones who stormed into a factory to cause trouble. Aren't you afraid security will kick you out? 'Cause trouble. We're here for justice. Teacher Chen stepped forward, clasping his hands behind his back, putting on his elder's authority. Lin Xiao, even if you and Jianjun are divorced, a day of marriage brings 100 days of affection. Cuihua is your former mother-in-law. How could you throw her out of the nursing home and leave her suffering at the military compound? This is unfilial. I snorted and walked up to them. My voice wasn't loud, but every word was clear. I took care of her for over a year. I paid for her nursing home out of my own savings. Her own daughter Chen Lily does nothing all day but lays around, and you never said a word to her. Now that I've divorced Qin Jianjun, I have no obligation to care for her anymore. And yet you're all here accusing me of being unfilial. Where in the world is there such logic? Who divorced you? Chen Lily jumped up and pointed at my nose. My brother said it was a fake divorce. It was supposed to make you come back and take care of mom willingly. Instead, you took advantage of the situation, abandoned my mother, and hid here enjoying the easy life. Fake divorce. I felt like I'd just heard the funniest joke in the world. Qin Jianjun filed unilaterally. It's in the hospital system records. My military family benefits have been revoked. You call that a fake divorce? Do you think I'm so easy to bully that you can all just do whatever you want with me? The workers around us started whispering. Someone murmured, filing a unilateral divorce. That's really low. Another said, I heard her former mother-in-law was bedridden, and she was the one taking care of her all along. It's not easy for her. Chen Lily heard them. Her face turned crimson with rage. She lunged at me, trying to claw me, but I sidestepped her. Just then, the workshop supervisor came running over. He furrowed his brow and demanded, what's going on here? Who's causing trouble in my workshop? Supervisor, I'm Lin Xiao's former father-in-law. Teacher Chen instantly put on a pitiful expression. This unfilial woman Lin Xiao kicked my bedridden wife out of the nursing home. We've come to get justice. Having a discussion is fine, but not in the factory and not disrupting production. The supervisor's expression darkened. He turned to me. Lin Xiao, is this true? It's true, but I divorced her son 6 months ago. I have no obligation to care for her mother. I spoke calmly. They stormed into the factory to cause trouble, and it's already disrupting everyone's work. The supervisor nodded, then called out toward the entrance. Security. Please escort these two out. If they keep causing trouble, call the police. Security arrived quickly. Chen Lily tried to throw a tantrum, but the guards grabbed her by the arms and dragged her out. She struggled and screamed, Lin Xiao, you'll die a horrible death. My brother won't let you get away with this. Teacher Chen was also escorted out, shooting me a venomous glare as he left. The workshop fell quiet again. Some of my fellow workers looked at me with newfound sympathy. The supervisor patted me on the shoulder. Lin Xiao, focus on your work. Don't let irrelevant people affect you. The way your former in-laws have handled this, they're definitely in the wrong. I nodded, thanked him, and sat back down at my sewing machine. Just as I picked up a piece of fabric, I noticed a familiar figure standing in the doorway, Qin Jianjun. He was wearing his uniform, his hair disheveled, his face pale. He was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. He'd clearly been called by his father and sister, and had witnessed the scene just now. I ignored him and started the machine again. The click-clack of the sewing machine filled the air, shutting out all the chaos once more. Whatever was coming, I was no longer afraid. Qin Jianjun stood in the workshop doorway for a long time. His silhouette lingered in the frame, but I never looked up again. The rhythmic sound of the sewing machine formed a barrier between us. My coworkers occasionally glanced at him, whispering. Eventually, probably feeling embarrassed, he turned and left. My stitches never wavered. My heart never stirred. In the past, seeing him appear before me in uniform always filled me with joy. Now, he just seemed foreign and superfluous. In the days that followed, I threw myself into work. The Hongmian garment factory's work wasn't easy. Every day I'd put in 8 hours on the sewing machine. My arms would ache so much I could barely lift them, and I pricked my fingers with needles more than once, but I never felt tired. Compared to my old life, working during the day and taking care of my in-laws at night, this hardship was filled with a sense of solid grounding. My sewing skills were among the best in the factory. Back at the textile plant, my master often praised my steady hands and sharp eyes, the quality of my work, the evenness of my stitches, the straightness of my lines. Now working on women's clothing, whether it was intricate frog buttons or fine edge stitching, I could do it quickly and well. Most of the workers in the workshop were women around my age. Once we'd spent some time together, they were happy to talk to me. Sister Zheng was a long-time employee. Her home was nearby. She knew about my divorce and would secretly slip me some of the pickled vegetables she'd made at home, saying, "Xiao, don't be sad. Men can't be relied on. Us women have our own skills, no matter where we go. We'll never starve." Xiaoli, who'd just joined the factory recently, was lively and often asked me for sewing tips. She'd say, "Sister Lin Xiao, the clothes you make are so beautiful. If you ever open your own shop, I'll definitely be your first customer." Hearing this, my heart felt warm. This was the first time I'd experienced such a comfortable kind of relationship, one where I didn't have to please anyone or read anyone's moods. In the past, at my in-laws' home, I'd walked on eggshells, afraid of saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing, and all I'd gotten in return was deception and betrayal. Now, in the factory, relying on my own skills earned me respect. That feeling was worth more than anything else. At the end of the month, when I got my pay envelope with the 350 yuan inside, my fingers trembled. This was my first paycheck earned entirely by myself after the divorce, clean, honest, every yuan smelling of sweat. I tucked the money into my pocket and first went to the post office to send 200 yuan to my parents back in their hometown. I also wrote them a letter, saying I'd started a new job, that everything was fine, and that they shouldn't worry about me. Of the remaining 150 yuan, I kept 50 for living expenses and deposited 100 in the bank. Bank counters in the 1990s always had long queues. Staring at the number in my passbook, I felt a sense of security I'd never experienced before. In the past, my money either went to buying medicine for my mother-in-law or snacks for my sister-in-law. I'd never saved a single cent for myself. Now, finally, I could make plans for my own future. After work, I went to the food market and bought half a caddy of pork and some greens. I went home and made myself a decent dinner. My rental room wasn't big, a little over 10 square meters, but I kept it clean and tidy. Looking at the steaming food on the table, I suddenly realized that the divorce wasn't an end, it was a new beginning. No more worrying about Qin Jianjun coming home late. No more feeling wronged by my mother-in-law's constant criticism. No more anger at my sister-in-law's tantrums. I could live my life according to my own wishes, and once I'd saved enough, like Shaoli had said, I could open my own little clothing shop and sell the clothes I made. Lying in bed at night, I thought about the future, and my heart filled with hope. The moonlight shone through the window and fell softly on the floor. I knew there might still be difficulties ahead, but I was no longer the weak, vulnerable Lin Xiao I'd once been. I had skills. I had backbone. As long as I worked hard, I could make something of myself. As for Qin Jianjun and his family, I didn't want to think about them anymore. They had their lives to live, and I had my path to walk. From now on, we owed each other nothing. On the weekend, when I didn't have to work, I finally allowed myself to sleep in. After getting up and washing up, I was planning to go to the fabric market to buy some materials to try making a new style dress, when suddenly there was a knock at the door. The knock wasn't heavy or light, but there was a hesitation to it that didn't sound like the landlord, or like one of my coworkers. My heart lurched, I had a bad feeling, but I still went to open the door. Standing outside was Chin Jianjun. He wasn't wearing his uniform. Instead, he'd put on a gray Dacron shirt with the cuffs rolled up, revealing his dark tanned arms. His hair was combed neatly, but it couldn't hide the red veins in his eyes or the faint dark circles underneath. He looked haggard, a far cry from the dashing battalion commander he'd once been. "Xiao," he began, his voice a bit hoarse, looking at me with a complex expression. "Could I come in for a few words?" I stood aside to let him in, but didn't close the door. I turned and walked over to the small stool by the wall and sat down, getting straight to the point. "Say what you came to say. I have things to do." The rental room was too small. He stood by the door, almost blocking the entire hallway. He glanced at the room's sparse furnishings, a wooden plank bed, a dresser with chipped paint, a small square table, and some piles of fabric in the corner, and guilt appeared on his face. "You live here. Why not find somewhere a little nicer? This place is fine. Cheap and clean. It's enough for me." My tone was flat. I wasn't planning to engage with him. "You didn't come all this way to ask about my living situation, did you?" Chin Jianjun pressed his lips together, walked over to the square table, and sat down. He placed both hands on the table, fingers interlaced, as if summoning every ounce of courage. "Xiao, the divorce. I'm sorry. It's too late for apologies." I cut him off. "Battalion Commander Chen, when you filed for divorce without telling me, didn't you think about how sorry you'd be? When your mother and sister conspired against me, didn't you think about how sorry you'd be?" His face flushed. He lowered his head, his voice even quieter. "It wasn't a real divorce. It was fake. Fake." I repeated the word, finding it bitterly ironic. "Chin Jianjun, do you think I'm that easy to fool? There's no such thing as a fake divorce. It's in the hospital system. My military family benefits are gone. Is that fake? You hid the divorce from me and made me look like a fool. Still caring for your mother with all my heart, was that fake too? I was forced into it by my mother and Lily." He looked up sharply, his eyes filled with desperation. I was facing my promotion evaluation back then, and the unit was swamped with work. My mother cried every day. Lily fanned the flames, saying the only way to make you come back and care for mom properly was a fake divorce. I had a moment of weakness. I just did it. I planned to explain everything after the evaluation and remarry you. A moment of weakness. I looked at him, feeling nothing in my heart. "Chin Jianjun, you've never truly respected me. You thought I couldn't live without you. You thought I'd forgive you for anything, like I always did. You took my devotion for granted. You trampled on my dignity. Now that things have gone wrong, you try to brush it off with a moment of weakness and being forced." He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off again. "Your mother's at the military compound with nobody to care for her. It's inconvenient now, isn't it? You miss how well I took care of her, that's why you came back to me, isn't it?" I stood up and looked at him. "Chin Jianjun, I'm telling you it's impossible. I'd rather stay single for the rest of my life. I'd rather live in this tiny rental room, but I will never go back to that house. I will never take care of your mother again." "That's not true." He stood up too, reaching for my arm. I dodged away. "Xiao, I sincerely want to remarry you. I know I was wrong. I'll treat you right from now on. I won't listen to my mother anymore. I'll figure things out with her. You won't have to worry about so much. Just come back." "No." I stepped back, creating distance. "I'm doing well now. I have a job. I can earn my own money. I don't have to read anyone's moods or take care of anyone. I don't need your treating me right. And I certainly don't need that so-called home of yours." His eyes dimmed. Despair appeared on his face. "Xiao, can't you give me one more chance? What about all those years of feeling between us? Have you forgotten them?" "Feeling?" I laughed bitterly. "All the feeling between us was exhausted by the scheming of you and your family. Chin Jianjun, just go. From now on, You live your life, and I'll live mine. Don't contact me again." He stood there, his lips moving but no words coming out. Finally, after a long pause, he slowly turned around and walked heavily toward the door. At the threshold, he stopped and looked back at me. His eyes were full of unwillingness and regret. But in the end, he pulled open the door and walked out. I watched his figure disappear down the stairwell, then closed the door casually. The sunlight streamed through the window, falling warmly on the floor. I took a deep breath. For the first time, I felt an unprecedented lightness in my heart. This time, I was truly letting go. Qin Jianjun didn't listen to me. For the next half-month, he clung to me like an unwanted stray dog. First, he showed up at the garment factory gate every day, standing by the roadside after my shift, dressed in his uniform. He'd attract sidelong glances from my coworkers. I'd pretend not to see him and walk out together with Sister Zhang and the others. He didn't dare approach, just followed at a distance, his gaze boring into me like a fishhook. Then he started calling the workshop dozens of times. Each time, the call was for me, always the same words. "I know I was wrong. Give me one more chance. I've already arranged things with my mother." At first, the switchboard operator would call me over, but after I spoke with the supervisor, any call from him was hung up immediately. I thought he'd give up after hitting a wall a few times. But somehow, he found my rental apartment. It was a drizzly evening. I'd worked overtime until after 8 and was soaking wet when I pulled out my keys to open the door. That's when I saw a figure standing under the eaves. Qin Jianjun was wearing a military green raincoat, his hair and shoulders soaked. He was holding a plastic bag. I don't know how long he'd been standing there. "Xiao." He came over as soon as he saw me, shoving the plastic bag into my hands. "I bought you some food. You must be hungry after working so late." I didn't take it. I opened the door and said coldly, "Qin Jianjun, what exactly do you want? I've already made myself very clear. There's no chance for us. I just want to make it up to you." He followed me inside. Rainwater dripped off him, leaving small wet spots on the floor. "Xiao, I know I've put you through so much suffering. My mother and Lily have wronged you too. I've talked to them. From now on, I won't let you suffer anymore. Make it up to me." I turned to face him, and suddenly I had to laugh. "How will you make it up to me? Give me back all the suffering I've endured, refund all the money I spent, or restore the dignity you and your family trampled on." His face paled, his lips moved. "I can pay you back. Just come back to me. From now on, I'll give you my entire salary. I'll handle my mother, you won't have to lift a finger." "No." I pulled a wooden box out from under my bed and opened it. Inside were stacks of receipts and IOUs. "I can earn my own money, but the money your family owes me, that I want back." I dumped the contents on the floor. Receipts of all kinds scattered everywhere. "This one. The 500 yuan in medical fees I shelled out after your mother broke her leg last year. This one. The 300 yuan your father owed from gambling that I secretly paid off because I didn't want to distract you in the military. This one. The nursing home payment receipt, 5 months. 1,400 yuan, your mother lived comfortably, and I paid it. And these. Receipts for the clothes I bought for you, the snacks for Lily, the rice and flour for your household. They add up to 865 yuan. I squatted down, picking up each receipt individually and placing them on the square table in front of him. "Qin Jianjun, I earned this money working day and night at the factory. I saved it by scrimping and going without. Back then, I thought we were family, that your family was my family. I thought it was only right to give. And what did I get in return? You all treated me like a fool, a free nanny, and you even used a divorce to catch me off guard." Qin Jianjun stared at the pile of receipts on the table. His face alternated between red and white. His eyes were filled with shock and guilt. "I didn't know. I never knew you paid off so many debts for my family." "Of course you didn't know." I gave a cold laugh. "You were busy with your promotion evaluation back then. Busy listening to your mother and sister's complaints about me. When would you have had time to care about how much I gave? You only knew that I refused to quit my job to take care of your mother full-time, that I was unfilial, that I didn't care about the family. I was wrong. Xiao, I'm so sorry." He reached out to touch the receipts. but pulled his hand back. His voice broke. "I'll pay you back. I'll do it as soon as possible. Just give me one more chance. Please." A chance. I looked at him, and the last flicker of feeling in my heart died completely. Chin Jianjun. Chances are not something you can hand out and take back whenever you want. You exhausted all your chances the moment you filed that divorce without telling me. The moment your mother and sister schemed against me. I gathered the receipts into an envelope and handed it to him. "Pay me back whenever it's convenient for you. From now on, your family's affairs are none of my business, and my affairs are none of yours. There is nothing between us except this debt." He took the envelope, his hands shaking uncontrollably, and then, finally, tears spilled from his eyes. "Xiao, I really regret this. I never should have listened to my mother. I should never have lied to you. Regret is useless." I walked to the door and pulled it open. "Chin Jianjun, please leave. Don't look for me anymore. Don't wait outside the factory. Let's just live our separate lives in peace." He stood there looking at me, crying harder, but in the end, he couldn't find any more words. Clutching the envelope, he stumbled out of the rental apartment and vanished into the rainy night. I closed the door, leaned against it, and finally let my own tears fall. Not out of sadness, out of relief. All those years of giving, all that suffering, finally, today, it was all settled. The next day, after the rain stopped, the sun was blindingly bright. I tidied the receipts, put them away in the drawer, and stopped thinking about Chin Jianjun. I threw myself wholly into my plan to save up and open a shop. I worked diligently at the garment factory. My skills grew more and more polished. The workshop supervisor assigned many of the more detailed orders to me, and my salary quietly rose to 400 yuan. Still, I pinched pennies. Apart from sending money to my parents, I saved every remaining yuan. At the same time, I discreetly looked for storefronts in the city. The small commodity market was thriving in the 1990s. Especially for children's clothing, parents were willing to spend on their kids. Using the experience I'd accumulated at the garment factory, I got a feel for popular styles, even drew some cute designs myself, and made a few sample pieces. When my coworkers saw them, they all praised them and said they'd definitely sell well if I opened a shop. Half a year later, I had saved 800 yuan. I rented a 10-square-meter shop on the small commodity street in the city center. The shop wasn't big, but the location was good and foot traffic was high. I whitewashed the walls, displayed the children's clothes I'd made, and hung a red sign with white lettering over the door. "Xiao's Children's Wear." It was officially open for business. On the very first day, many customers came. The children's clothes I'd made were original in style, with fine stitching and fair prices. Many parents picked out one item after another. I sold 5 or 6 pieces right away. Looking at the genuine earnings in my hands, I felt sweeter than if I'd eaten honey. In the days that followed, I grew even busier. Days spent in the shop greeting customers, nights staying up to make new clothes. Often I worked until the early hours. I was exhausted, but watching my business grow and watching the number in my passbook inch upwards, all the hard work felt worth it. Occasionally, I'd hear about Chin Jianjun's family through my coworkers. Zhang Cuihua had stayed at the military compound's temporary dormitory for only a short while before she was constantly crying because Chin Jianjun couldn't take care of her properly. She complained the dormitory conditions were poor. The food didn't suit her taste, and she was always arguing with other military dependents, causing chaos in the battalion. Chin Jianjun was driven to his wits' end. Without enough time to care for her personally, he hired a caregiver, but several caregivers came and went, all driven away by Zhang Cuihua's impossible demands. Chin Lily remained as idle as ever. She used to rely on Chin Jianjun's subsidies. But after Chin Jianjun's household troubles wore him down, affecting his promotion, his salary barely increased, and he had to pay caregiver fees and Zhang Cuihua's medical expenses. There was no extra money for her. She tried to find easy work but couldn't stand hardship and had no skills. She went through several jobs, none lasting long. Finally, she just stayed home, living off her parents, bickering with Zhang Cuihua every day. Teacher Chin remained the same, hitting the gambling tables from time to time, coming home and losing his temper when he lost. The house was a constant uproar, never peaceful. Someone said Qin Jianjun came looking for me a few more times. But my shop was too busy. He came twice but didn't find me. Later, whether out of sheer shame or because he was too entangled in his family affairs, he stopped coming. I heard that the cocky, confident look had faded from his eyes, replaced by weariness and a ravaged appearance. He often sat alone, smoking and staring off into space, mumbling about regret. When I heard this, my heart didn't stir even a ripple. They had chosen their own path. They would have to swallow the bitter fruit. They plotted against me and looked down on me, thinking I couldn't survive without them. Yet not only did I survive, I lived better than ever before. My children's clothing shop grew. Later, I rented the shop next door and expanded. I hired 2 apprentices to help me. I was no longer Lin Xiu, the woman who did nothing but revolve around her in-laws and swallow her grievances. I was a shop owner who could stand on her own, living with ease and confidence. In my spare time, I'd go back to my hometown, take my parents out for shopping and meals, and make up for all the years I hadn't been able to be there for them. Looking at me now, my parents' faces glowed with pride. They never had to worry about me again. Once, I went to the wholesale market to pick up inventory and saw Qin Jianjun from afar. He was wearing civilian clothes, his hair noticeably grayer. Beside him was Zhang Cuihua, leaning on a cane, her face haggard, all her former arrogance gone. He saw me too. A complicated expression crossed his face. He seemed frozen. He looked as if he wanted to speak, but in the end, he merely lowered his head, helped Zhang Cuihua along, and hurried away. I watched their retreating figures, smiled softly, and turned to continue on my way. The sunlight fell warmly on me. I knew my life had already turned a brand new page. All those old grievances and injuries had become medals of my own growth. Relying on my own skills and my own backbone, I'd stood firm in the waves of the 1990s. I'd become the person I wanted to be. There's never been anyone in this world who can't survive without someone else. A woman, as long as she is independent and strong, can live beautifully and wonderfully. And those who plotted against me, they have paid the price for their own selfishness and greed. My story continues, and it will only get better. After listening to this story, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your ideas in the comments. I look forward to hearing your voice.